What's up, you guys? Hey, week number 16 of the Chazway podcast. So crazy, man. Each week going by, we're so far into the year already, like almost the end of April, which is unbelievable. But today, man, we're joined by my friend Drewbie Wilson. Drewbie Wilson is in the Dallas Metroplex area. And I know this guy because I went to this awesome event last year, right at about a year ago, actually, in Dallas, Texas. And actually, I've had a couple of guests that I've met through this crazy event. So it's so awesome how networking can truly be something you can capitalize on if you choose to, right? And I talk about that a lot on the Chazway podcast. I talk about if you like take opportunities to grow and you like, I like social media, for example. There's so many great things that can come from social media if you use it as a platform of opportunity to grow. And this is no exception to that at all. I've had Dustin Johnson on the show, and I've been so fortunate to visit with Danny Galvez, who's such a great guy, Jessica Dennehy, and there'll be more to come. I know that, I know there'll be a day when Ryan Stewman's on the show, right? He's gonna like drop some crazy nuggets, so but the reason I ask people like you guys to be on is because, first of all, you bring an incredible amount of value. And secondly, because I believe that you guys, the framework that people like you, Drewbie, and the people that I've mentioned before, I think that you guys have done some work. I don't think any of us are done doing the work, but I think we're doing the work on a daily basis to become stronger, greater, more amazing human beings, because our desires are so much greater than average. And so if my goal is to bring value to the viewer or the listener, then why not bring more people in who are doing the work on a daily basis so that we can share together and get that out to more people, and hopefully we can make a larger impact. And so again, you're no exception to that. I have so many questions for you, some business related, some personal related. What I would say to the listener today is, generally I leave this so wide open, but as I was driving, I had a real estate meeting today, and I was on my way back here to get ready for this podcast. I thought I'll probably let the listener know that this is going to be, if you're a business owner, or you're thinking about going into business, or you're thinking about really making some adjustments, maybe in your personal development or in your personal life, to really try and hone in on the best version of yourself, this would be a great message for you to take some serious notes. And obviously you can always go back and listen through as many times as you want, or watch it, whatever, on YouTube. But this message, at least the questions I intend to ask, the things I want to talk about with Drewbie, are going to be some real life, practical application, tactical things that I believe will benefit you. And because I don't know a ton about Drewbie, but what I know is you're a great dad. I know that you're a great husband. I know that you're a business builder. I know that you have a weight loss story. I know that you've chosen to take control of your physical fitness and mindset every single day. And I know it wasn't always like that. And I think that's the truth for everybody. And I'm going to let you talk. I know I'm giving like this crazy long edifying intro, but that's because I'm passionate about this, because I think it's so important when we do the work, and so I have a lot to ask you, and I think that's just, it's powerful, and it's awesome. So anyways, hey, my guest today is Drewbie Wilson. I'll shut up and let you talk. Why don't you introduce yourself? Where are you from? How'd you end up in Dallas? And let's just go from there.
Well, man, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. It's truly an honor to be here, to be in my situation, and to be me. I'm extremely grateful. I do have a pretty wild story. Some of the things I've been involved in, like you said, I've lost a ton of weight. I have moved my family from Ohio to Dallas. So that's where we are currently. We're here in the Dallas Metroplex. 3 years ago, I sold my home, left a career job, told my family, hey, we're moving to Dallas to start over and really see what's going on in life and take hold of this opportunity. Because of some people I met online. I know that sounds really crazy. If you go back 10, 15 years ago when we were kids, and you say, I met these people online, I'm moving my family across the country, like, might not be as cool of a story as it is today.
Or as safe, frankly.
Or as safe. Well, high risk, high reward, brother.
Right.
That's really the truth of my story, is that I'm someone who has looked for opportunity a lot in my life. And when I've been given an opportunity, I really try to do all of the work to make that opportunity worth something, right? And so, as you were saying, I moved my family from Ohio to Dallas 3.5 years ago, when I walked away from a 6-year career as an insurance agent, to start over in the Apex Break Free Academy system, where I started working with small business owners and entrepreneurs, helping them build better business, better life, really just dialing in on systems and processes, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a few things that really get results, and most of it comes back to your ability to, be disciplined and put together intentionality with your actions and your time. And that's really what leads to success. And that's why, being part of the Apex community, I really focus on sharing that message of the G code. And as I've kind of coined for myself, crushing the day, because we're all given the same 24 hours, right? We all get the same amount of time every single day. If we're blessed and lucky enough, whatever you subscribe to, if you get to open your eyes and have another crack at another day, we all get the same amount of time. So what happened is I really started getting intentional about that time and how I'm investing it, because I can go and work and make more money. I can go and create relationships, but the things that I need to make sure I want in life all come back to me being very disciplined with my time. And so that's like the biggest thing I hope someone listening to this understands, is that you are limited in the amount of time you're given, and we all get the same amount of it. So if you want to be successful, you want to rise to the top and be that best version of yourself, the first thing you have to focus in on is your time and how you're using it.
Oh, it's so good. And so true. So true. You've got to absolutely, like, we are all given the same amount of time each day. And it all ends up going back to how do you utilize the time that we have, and I think that's so important. Hey, you talked about crushing the day. Talk a little bit about that, that I follow that page on Instagram, and I think that's also the name of your podcast. Am I correct in that? So where did that come from? How long ago did you kind of create that? Is that talk about it? Is that a side project for you? Is that just where your heart is? What's the story behind crushing the day?
Yeah, so Crushing the Day is, I have a podcast called Crushing the Day. So I do a daily podcast Monday through Friday. And I have a book called Crushing the Day out on Amazon. It was a bestseller when it was released, #1 new release, all those fun titles. But really, it all comes back to when I started the journey of personal development, right? We all go through this moment in time where we decide, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to be a better version of myself. And for me, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago now at this point that I started going on this journey. But what happened is I started realizing, hey, I'm out of shape. I'm overweight. I'm sleeping in the morning, and I'm just not feeling very fulfilled in life. And I really needed a change. And so I told my wife, hey, I'm just going to start getting up when my body tells me to get up, instead of just kind of tossing and turning for 2 hours every morning. And I started going for walks. And I kind of just wanted to clear my head and get some idea of what I wanted out of life, because I kind of was in a stagnant position, right? And I'm sure the listeners out there's going to be a couple people that know that feeling where they're kind of just stuck. And so on those walks, I would listen to motivational YouTube and podcasts like this, and books on Audible, right? And I listened to a lot of stuff by like Jim Rohn and Ed Milet and Eric Thomas and Ryan Stewman, obviously. And what I started recognizing was that, I think it was Jim Rohn said something along the lines of, either you run the day or the day runs you. Mm-hmm. Right. And so one thing I kind of recognized from all of these guys doing personal development coaching and the quote gurus of success is they were really just taking these ideas that they were hearing and reading and learning from others, and kind of just reusing it in their own way. And so for crush the day before it crushes you, that was kind of my mantra to myself. Hey, get up, get all the hard shit done, knocked out of the way early. And then you have the rest of the day to do whatever you want with, right? Whatever you decide your version of success looks like. If you get up and you do all the hard things in your day first, then the rest of your day is easy peasy. So crush the day before it crushes you, because here's what happens. You get up, you roll over, you grab your phone, you start scrolling social media, and you see some shit from the news or some political thing, or, you get an email from a client who's canceling the big deal that you were counting on to come through. And it's real easy to go into this negative or toxic mindset first thing in the morning. And then what happens? It throws your whole day off. So for me, it's the idea of, okay, when I get up, I'm going to focus on gratitude. I'm going to focus on the things that are important to me in life, my health and my wellness, right? What's the point of having a family and creating success if I'm not around to enjoy it? So let me make sure I'm going and doing my workout. Because, you know, at one point in my life, I weighed more than 300 pounds because I wasn't making good decisions. I wasn't disciplined and I didn't have purpose.
Yeah.
But when I had found that purpose of, hey, I have a six, you know, at the time it was about a 3-year-old son. I have this beautiful wife. I have this home. I can't just waste this away. So let me get intentional about being grateful for who I am and where I am, and then start thinking about where I want to go in the future, because now I can get more intentional. And so that circles back to every day I wake up and my mentality is I want to crush the day before it crushes me, right? I'm telling this to myself when I'm looking in the mirror. Hey, crush the day before it crushes you. Crush the day before it crushes you. Go do the work. Go get it done. Because if you do that, the results will follow. This is just how life is. If you do the work and you are consistent, you will get a result. Now, what happens is people always expect that result to be this big gold grand thing. And sometimes it's not that. So that's where, you know, the consistency comes into play, because as you keep going through these good days, bad days, and different days, if you're tracking them, if you're measuring them, right? If you have a process for looking back and saying, okay, yeah, I win more often than I fail, but I do fail because that's what makes me get better. Then that's how you know every day you're crushing the day. And that's kind of where it all comes back from full circle, right? Is this really me looking at myself in the mirror and going, hey, it's time to crush the day before it crushes you.
For sure. So you have an Instagram page for, first of all, let me ask you this. You do a podcast every single day. So are you just doing an audio version of that then?
Yep. So basically, here's what my morning looks like, right? I wake up, I do my gratitude exercises, I meditate, I read, I go for my workout. Either I walk or I ride my bike or I go to the gym. And then I create from that morning motivation and that dopamine rush, the serotonin I have from working out. I use that to kind of create a motivational quote for the day. So it's kind of, again, just a reminder to myself, like, hey, man, here's something motivational for you to get out there and think about today. So what I do is I post that to my Facebook profile as like my morning post every day. People love the motivation. I work with entrepreneurs and business owners, and they need that kind of stuff in the morning. That's what I need too. So I just know that's what they're looking for. And then what I do is I take that quote. Tomorrow, it becomes my post on my Crushing the Day Instagram page. And then in the 3 or 4 months from now, when I get to it, I'll take that quote and I'll 3, 4, 5 minutes sharing my thoughts on an audio recording about that specific quote, which is what becomes the podcast. So if we stop here for a second, anybody who's listening, this is how you can take one piece of content and repurpose it multiple ways, right? For small business owners, entrepreneurs that are like, how does this guy create all this content? Well, here's the secret. It's one thing, and I just reuse it 4 or 5 different ways with different mediums. Right? Sometimes it's just a text version. Sometimes it's an audio version. Sometimes it might be a short like story in my Instagram, but it's all the same piece of content just being reutilized. So for the small business owners that are like, how do they put all this stuff out there? There's a secret to reusing this stuff that makes a big difference, but that's my secret sauce.
Oh, I love it. Thanks for dropping the secret sauce on that for sure. So let me ask you this then, because I'm a guy who also does a podcast. I'm getting ready to start a second podcast. And then I had a friend text me last night and she's like, hey, listen, so this last year, Drewbie, all of the podcasts I did, they come out weekly. Last year was 90% was just me, and they were only about 10 or 15 minutes. And this year I decided every week they'll be with a guest. And that was and it's been amazing. And the growth has been awesome. But last year they were a lot more, they were really like, I'd pray about kind of whatever was on my heart or my mind, and then that's what I'd speak on, and these are more intentional this year. And so I had a friend message me yesterday. She's been a great listener and fan and follower of the podcast. She goes, I love your guests, but I really miss your podcast from last year when they were just like straight from your heart. And I'm like, actually, I'm gonna add that back in, because that is what my heart, like, I really love to speak straight from the heart. That's like what you said about, like, you start your day, you do all those things early in your day, and then you post a motivational post on your Facebook, like that's kind of where my heart is too. Like I love to just share something, right? Whether that's an audio video version or just like you said, and just some text format. Anyways, having said that, so I'm gonna add that back in. Like I got nothing but time, right? Haha. But it's important, because you're like, you really are impacting lives with that. And so if I can impact some more lives, then I'll take the time to do that. So my question is, um, and I know that you're a systems guy, so I know you're gonna have a great answer for this question. You're like, okay, 3 or 4 months down the road, I take that same message that I used on, you're crushing the day, and then now you use that on your podcast. How do you track that? How do you go 3 months down the road? You're like, hey, I'm gonna take that message from April, 21st to 22nd, whatever, the 19th, and how do you remember that that's the one you spoke on for this day's podcast?
So truthfully, I started the podcast probably 6 months, maybe a year after I had started posting daily on social media for the quote. So when I started, I just went back to the very beginning of the Instagram page and started there. So if you go back and follow, the numbered podcast matches up with the post on Instagram. So I just know based on like the title of the last podcast that I recorded, I can scroll back through my Instagram and I can find that original quote. And then I just walk through the graph one at a time, recording them. And so I usually do somewhere between 5 and 10 recordings a week. And so right now I'm probably, I don't know, maybe 2 months ahead on recordings, but that's the way that I've tracked it, is I just went back to the beginning and started there. And just every
So
week.
you'll never catch up, basically. And you don't have to track it, because
Nope.
you just know, like, whatever, like if you're 20 episodes ahead, you'll go to that 20th one and you'll go back to whatever the title is, will be that last title of that particular post.
Correct. Yeah, I can find the quote, because typically the way I do mine is like I'll read the quote and I'll kind of like pause for a second to let it sink in, and then I'll start spitballing about my, what's on my heart about it. And I was thinking about this recently because I'm up to, I think, episode 475 on my Crushing the Day podcast. Now, again, they're shorter, somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes each, so they're, not a long podcast. I'm thinking I'll probably do like 1,000 of those and then maybe move to a different format or do something a little bit different, because I've been podcasting now. I've got, like I said, almost 500 of those individual episodes. I've done well over 150 or more interviews with other Apex clients and members. I've been on a guest on, countless podcasts. And so one thing for me that I really want to hone on the listener about is that there's a lot of opportunity in podcasts to share your message, right? And I think the biggest thing for me, more than just the marketing and the sales and the business side of it, was someone came to me and said, hey, Drewbie, think about it like this. In the future, whether it's, something bad happens to you or your grandkids, they can go back and they can listen to all this wisdom and all this stuff that you've been sharing and saving. And I don't know if you recognize the value of that, right? When we were coming up, there was home videos and stuff like that we watched, but we have this opportunity to leave wisdom for future generations of our family. And this is like the best time ever, because you can literally just pick up your iPhone and hit the record button and start saving content that can be given for generations. And so I love that you're going back to doing kind of your own thing, because there is value in that for future generations. And really the best part about this is when everyone gets started, we all suck, right? Like none of us have this figured out. We're all just kind of like bumbling our way through it, but it's the repetitions that lead to things getting better, right? It's like when you work out, it's like when you were playing baseball as a kid, you didn't know how to hit the ball until you stood there and took 100 swings at it. In any sport, it's the same thing. You get good through repetition. That's the same thing for me when it came to losing more than 100 pounds, right? I had to get up and be consistent in the workout. But the same thing can be said with the podcasting. As long as you're consistent and you show up and you just do it week after week after week, even though some weeks are better than others, you create this database of content that can be saved forever. Now that we have the cloud, like as long as someone in your family has your logins somewhere, right? You should be sharing those with your spouse and all that. Like, think about how much content you can leave for the world and for your children and for and just the people in general. That's the impact that we're able to make. So by all means, you know, whether you do a solo show or you just mix those in with this one, I am on board with that train of you doing some of those from the heart speeches, because that's the stuff that really, it carries the message a little more intentionally. Not that these aren't great, and I'm obviously happy to be here, but when you sit down and you really just put that on your heart and share that, man, that's some powerful stuff.
Oh, I agree, and I appreciate you. Agree. Commenting on that, because I think you're absolutely right. It's interesting you talked about like sharing the wisdom piece, and so I call it like archives, and that's kind of what I've always called it, because somebody you said somebody mentioned that to you and gave you that somebody gave me that too, and they said, well, actually originally, dude, somebody came to me and was like, first of all, somebody said to me, all you got to do is start. And I believe that about everything in life. You just start, 100%. Like, do it, dude, messy action, just do it, and so that's when I started at the beginning of 2021. I was like, I'm going to finally do the podcast. And listen, if you're, if for people that listen to podcasts, if you need some inspiration, Ed Milet's one of the top, I don't know if he's the top, but he's one of the top podcasts in the world. Dude started in his closet, didn't know how to do podcasts, right? The dude's got one of the best, the highest quality podcast to me on earth. He didn't know how to do it. Like, messy action, bro. You just got to start. So I mean, that was one of my inspirations in the beginning, was like, if Ed Milet didn't know how to do it and had to figure it out or Google it, or he just found somebody smarter than him. Right. I mean, like, just figure it out. It's okay to figure it out. And here's the deal, like, not to get on a tangent for a second, but the way you do it the first time is not the way you're going to do it the 5th time or the 20th time. Or, we have this conversation off air. It's like, hey, what camera are you using? Right. I mean, the mic I'm using today is not the mic I used 2 weeks ago. It's definitely not the mic I used on episode 1 a year and a half ago. And so you just continue to evolve and grow. The greatest thing is you've got the archive. And then to take it one step further, just like you talked about, there's the wisdom piece. There's the legacy piece. You're leaving your legacy. Like, listen, think about the crushing the day messages that you have. And I hope that the listeners go and find, and of course it'll be in the description so they can go find that Instagram page. But I mean, I don't know if you know this, I always try and tag you, but at least a few days a week, I post those and I tag you in those. And the reason is because those bring value to people. Those have power. The message is power. It just takes a few words to change somebody's day. And I know those.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, for sure. But I know that those words come from you, and I know that's organic, right? And so, and they obviously, if they impact me, they're going to impact others. So, I mean, to impact more lives, we share, and so I think there's so much power in that. Anyways, I could talk about it forever, but I think that's one thing I was in this real estate meeting this morning, and this lady's like, I don't know how you're so public with what you do. And I was like, man, because, let me tell you why. Because yesterday I went live, and you'll get a kick out of this. I went live, pulling the bank, and I'm like, when I leave the bank, I'm going to go live and I'm going to talk about Thomas Keenan's book, Unfuck Yourself. I just finished it, and I'm going to talk, because the thing that impacted me the most was talking about core values. It's just something I haven't ever written down. And you've heard, somebody that's into personal development, you've heard those kind of things said in a million different ways, but I've never heard it so simplified. It really resonated with me. It was early in the book, and it just hit me hard. It impacted me. So it's something that it's a goal for me, is to really get those values written down. So I'm at the bank parking lot, just 3 blocks from here at the bank. And I'm like, when I leave here, I'm going to go live and I'm going to talk about that. It's Monday. I'm going to call it Monday Motivation. So I talked about it. I edified him a little bit. I don't even know Thomas, but I just really enjoy the book, and so I just edified the book, gave him the credit. And then I just talked about a little bit about that and what that meant to me. Right. An hour later, I'm at my office and I get a text. Dude I know in Alabama. Never met him in my life. Just dude I know, because social media is an absolute tool if you choose to keep it as a tool, not a crutch. Get your ass out of politics and bull crap and get it into something that's going to feed your soul. And it's like I'm not going to go find it, but I can. But the dude's like, hey man, I can't tell you how much I needed to read that message today. Like, I'm in a really crappy place in my life, and you really, really inspired me. And so when that girl today was like, I don't know how you're not afraid to be in front of the camera. I'm like, because I don't do it for me. Like, because somebody needs to hear what we have to say. And I always say that, I say this so often, our journey's not about us. It's about the people that are supposed to hear it. Right. And in this case, I just had the bravery to share something because that's what we do. Right. So I'm going to tone that down and end that piece with just saying that these are our archives. These are the legacies that we may be leaving. And it is like, I've got a 15-year-old son. You have a 6-year-old son. We have spouses, we have family, we have friends, we have listeners. And so that's why I always ask people like, hey, share. If something impacts you, share it. Don't do it for me. Do it for the person that might be struggling and they need to hear it. Somebody needs to hear about my weight loss journey. Somebody needs to hear about your weight loss journey. Somebody needs to hear about the impact of changing, making business decisions, maybe stepping out and really going full force, maybe having the faith to take a leap and go into their own business instead of, working for the man or whatever. Right. So crushing the day is awesome. I think it's so cool. I love that you've not only that you do the daily podcast, which is a chore in itself. I don't know if people realize, even though if like you said, they're short, there is still work in that, so props to you for that. So let me go back to the beginning of this. You talked about like you move your family basically across the country and you decide to go work in Dallas, Texas. How did that come about?
So I was an insurance agent. I wasn't an agent, I was a producer, right? So I was a sales guy in an insurance agent's office. And I was pretty much the top of my market, maybe not the top guy, but in the top couple people every month of production, sales. We won all the awards. And I kind of got to a point where as I said, I felt very plateaued, right? I was making okay money, but not great money. I was married to a beautiful lady, but wasn't totally satisfied with myself. We had this, we had our son and like the normal life, but I really just didn't have that internal happiness. And so I went to my boss and I'm kind of like, hey man, I really feel like I should be making more or have more something, just something doesn't feel right. And he said, hey man, just be patient. And one day you're going to have your name on the door and you're going to have, this residual income and all this stuff. And I'm thinking like, well, that sounds great. But right now I get paid when I sell something. I don't got no residual. I got nothing like that. And I'm not a very patient guy. So I kind of was like, cool. In my mind, as a sales dude, I went, all right, what do I need to make more money? I need more leads, right? That's the one thing I can try to figure out because I can only make so many sales. But if I can get more leads, I'll have more opportunity for people to sell stuff to. So I go online and I'm like, how do these guys get these leads? And so I start looking online and learning how to do online marketing. So I find Stuman, I find this phone site software, I buy it, I start making funnels, which is basically a website that collects people's information for insurance. And so I started using it, having a little success, and I basically doubled my insurance production in the first month. Well, that of course threw up a bunch of flags in the community because people are like, well, you're one of the top guys. How did you double overnight? Well, fast forward a month, I'm talking to them. I'm telling them I got these leads online and I'm doing this marketing stuff with Facebook and this phone site software. And so these guys call me and they're kind of like, well, how much to set that up for me? I don't know, like $1,500 or $2,000 or something, right? And at the same time, I get a call from a lady who says, you're the expert at this. How much for an hour of your time to get on the phone and help me dial this in? Well, me still being in very much an hourly mindset was like, I don't know, $50 for an hour. And she said, well, hey, I'll give you 75. But I want to pause for a moment because this is like a very humbling question for people. And I want the listener to really ask themselves, how much is your time worth every hour? Mm-hmm. Like if you show up on a job site, how much can you ask someone to pay you for your skills? Because this is something that really opened my eyes to finding more value in myself, but also understanding that I have a lot more skills to bring to the table than I gave myself credit for. And so I really just want the listener to kind of take a moment to think about that, because this is like a very for someone who's not an entrepreneur but has that bug, this is going to be the thing that opens their mind up to what's possible.
Mhm.
So this woman says, "Hey, I'll give you $75." I get on the phone with her. I have an absolute blast talking to her about the stuff that I'm doing and how it works. She sends me a Venmo for $75, and that, okay, now I understand it. Now I've like, how am I going to go and earn what my worth is, right? How am I going to get what I'm worth? So these guys call me, they want insurance leads, $2,500 to set it up for them. So in one weekend, I went from making like an average of 3 or 4 grand a month, working 50, 60 hours a week to I made $8,000 in one weekend selling marketing packages to all these other insurance agents.
And all you were doing is like you were just still doing this as an insurance guy. You had already done the work. You did the legwork. Like you had no affiliation with phone sites. You just
No,
figured the crap out. Not crap, but you figured the stuff out and you're just teaching them how to convert. Like you're like, hey, this is
correct.
what I did. Now you're doing you did the legwork. You're the middleman. You're showing them
That's
how.
it. I figured it out. I went on there and these guys wanted it. So I said, "Hey man, I'll set it up for you and this is what it'll cost."
It's
And
awesome.
yeah, but so it opens my mind up to like, holy smokes, like this is more than what I realized is
Sure.
possible. Fast forward a month or two, Ryan Stewman calls me. He says, "Hey man, I see you're in the group. I see you're helping people with my software.
And you
You know,
don't know Ryan. You
I
obviously know
don't know
probably who
Ryan.
he
Yeah, well,
is.
we had no relationship other than like I know who he is. I follow his content, and I obviously bought his software, but he doesn't know me. I don't know him. All of a sudden, he calls me up and said, "Hey man, I want to give you an opportunity to come on board with me and help me build this software. I need a team of guys like you who are successful with it that can help others. Are you interested?" So, well, I mean, yeah, kind of. He's like, "Listen, I'm going to pay you. You do whatever you want to do. You can keep selling your marketing stuff. I don't care, but I need your help. What do you think?" Man, it's a no brainer. So I get on board with him. I come onto the company. Within the first month or two, we had some success. We were working on things. I had some people that came back and said, "Hey, I know Ryan has this Apex Mastermind thing. I appreciate your help with this other stuff. How do I join that too?" So I go back to Ryan. I say, "Hey, man, uh, these folks, they want to buy this Apex program that you have. What do you want me to do?" Go sell it, of course. Like, what do you mean? Go help them buy it. Take their money and get them in here. So I'm okay. And so I'm still in the insurance world. I'm doing this marketing stuff on the side. I'm helping people in the phone sites group. And now Ryan's like, "Hey man, go. You can help people join this Apex program." So I do. I did. A handful of clients signed up in the first month after that. He calls me back. He says, "Hey man, you're in the wrong business." Says, "I know you're selling insurance and whatever, but like you're in the wrong business. I want you to fly down to Texas and spend the day with me. And I want to have a real like conversation about what your future could look like." So, again, I'm 6 years into a career that I thought I'd never have. Because if you read the book, you'll know like I grew up selling weed. I was kind of a shitty student. I kind of fucked off a lot. I was kind of a rebel, as you can tell. I'm covered in tattoos and whatever. So to walk away from a 6-year career was kind of a scary thought. But I said, "Hey, I see what's possible in myself. I know in my heart that there's something bigger at play here." So I went to my wife, I went to my family and said, "Hey, I'm walking away from this business. I'm going to start online with this dude that I met who, I flew down to Texas and had one conversation with basically. And now I'm going to start over at this company as like a support guy and commission only sales." Fast forward 6 months, things are going great. I've been back and forth flying. Business wise, everything's amazing. Tough time for the family. I don't know if anyone's ever gone on that journey or has had to be away from their spouse and their young kid to travel for work. It was really hard on my family. I made a lot of selfish decisions thinking for the future of like, oh, I'm building this great future for us, not thinking about that, my wife and kid were living in the now, wondering why I'm constantly gone, why I'm on all these trips, why I'm going and doing all these things. And they're just sitting at home waiting for me to get there. So kind of a message to people like the grind is good, right? Like get out there and do what you got to do, but also remember your family is a big part of what's allowing you to have that success. So due to that, I went home and said, "Hey, guess what? We're going to move to Dallas." So we put our home on the market. 48 hours later, full price offer. We sold our house, moved to Dallas at the end of August of 2019. And basically, when I got to Dallas my first day, Ryan says, "Hey, man, I got good news. I got bad news. Bad news is you're fired. Good news is I'm promoting you to VP of the Apex company. I'm letting you go from the phone sites team. I think you have a bigger mission and a purpose here." And so I've been the VP of the company since August of 2019. We're going on 3 years together now. We've had an amazing relationship. We've helped thousands of clients. But the other side of that, again, not businesses and everything, I had to go through some hard times with my family and learn a lot of lessons about what's really important when it comes to time investment, because I was investing a lot of time in my business and my growth, but it led to a pretty big gap in my relationships at home, both with my spouse and with my son. And that took a lot of like real deep dive personal learning and things that I had to understand. There's value in working and grinding, but you also have to remember the importance of that family. And so I'm very blessed to say that, here we are 3.5 years later, that my wife and I are the happiest we've ever been. My, son and I, every Tuesday we hang out for a couple hours in the morning, and I get to do like field trip day with him. We were skateboarding earlier. But that's kind of what got me here, man, is I had to go on that journey. I had to have these experiences, and I had to ultimately learn what success for me looks like. And this is, again, kind of that message, right? Success is a perspective. Just because some people are like, oh, Lambos and private jets and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't have to be the listener's version of success. The listener's like, hey, I want to have a life where I get to spend a couple hours a weekend fishing. I get to go to all of my kids' sporting events, and then I get to take my wife out on a date once a week. Like, if that's what success looks like to you, then hell yeah, get after it.
Mm-hmm.
But it still comes back to the discipline of, okay, what is important? What are the priorities? And what am I investing my time and energy into doing to make that a reality?
Yeah, and I think that goes right back to what you said in the beginning of this visit, and that is like, you got so many hours in the day. Where are you going to invest those hours? I think that is just another reminder and another way of saying, like, just like plug and play. Plug your time into plug your time in the day into the places that are going to bring you value. I use that word so often, but truly, like, I mean, maybe it is, just like your investment in the morning is your gratitude time and your workout time and your, the time that you're investing in you, also takes that investment into your family each day, because that is part of the long game, right? And so I think that's an important piece of it. A lot of people talk about the grind. Well, part of the grind is just like, very much like you said, part of that grind is staying in tune with your priority long term, which is, if that is your priority is family, then in that case, it's your family, and if family's not everybody's jam, and that's okay too, but if it is, it's important to stay in tune with that, because that is, it is, I mean, like you said, you had to go through a season, and maybe that was to appreciate what you had, and maybe as importantly, it's to share with other people, because they're going to go through those seasons, and so it's sometimes it's so that, like we talked about earlier, part of what we go through is sometimes to help resonate with other people, because they're going to go through it too, can we go like super real for a second?
Yeah, what's the gap?
Do you struggle with imposter syndrome ever?
Oh, yes. Yes and no. So it's, do I get imposter syndrome? Sometimes, but I try not to struggle with it anymore. And so here's the rewire on that, right? So imposter syndrome, what is it? I've always kind of looked at it as, hey, you get this feeling that you don't deserve to be in the situation you are, right? A lot of it comes to people that are kind of like, hey, man, I don't know if I'm that guy. Like, everybody's talking big about me, but I don't know if I'm that guy, right? You're kind of in the spotlight. You're kind of put on the spot to talk about something specific, whether it's being the knowledgeable or having the skill set. And to you, what happens is you recognize, most people that have this thought is that there's still so much more for you to learn, that you don't consider yourself the best of the best of the best, right? You recognize that hey, I'm a guy and I'm just trying to do something, I might have some skills, but I'm still just a man. And so what happens is that imposter syndrome shows up, and it kind of makes you doubt yourself, and it makes you kind of wonder like, oh, am I good enough for this? Do I have what it takes? And the rewire for me came to a guy. I had gone to a mastermind in Kansas City. We were scootering through the city late at night, and we sat down and had some barbecue with some guy at this restaurant, and we were talking about imposter syndrome. He said, hey man, you got to remember that feeling comes because you are living in integrity. I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, you're an integrity driven person, right? You always want to do right. You always want to live by your word. I'm like, well, yeah, of course. He says, so what happens is when you're put in a position where you're asked to share your wisdom, you recognize that you aren't the smartest man in the world, right? You don't know everything. So you have that feeling as though, well, why would they ask you if you don't know everything to share? And that's a good thing because it keeps you humble. It keeps you understanding that while you are in a position to share wisdom with a certain person who's not in that position, you're still humble enough to recognize that there's more for you to learn. So you should use that as a motivating factor, because when you stand at the front of the room, you're always going to do your best to deliver your best, because you know in your heart of hearts that you would never want to lead anyone down a path that's not going to be good for them. You would never want to give someone advice that isn't going to make them a better version of themselves. And so when you're starting to have those feelings, recognize it and rewire it as, hey, this means that I am in integrity, because when I stand up and do whatever it is I've been called to do, I'm going to do it with my whole heart and with the intention of leaving the other person or the audience better than when I got there. So do I suffer with it? Not as much as I used to, but I definitely still recognize it. And I've just tried to learn how to rewire that feeling to saying, hey, if I feel it, then it means I know I'm living in integrity and I'm going to always show up and do my best.
For those of you guys that are listening, one of the reasons I asked Drewbie that question is because, I bring up Apex often. And I remember talking to probably Danny back a couple months ago. And I remember saying to the listeners, like, I don't like, my pitch isn't for Apex. I just happen to bring Apex up when I'm talking to people that are involved in it, guests that are on the show, just because it is a commonality. It's common, it's common conversation, and it's how I'm connected. But the reason I asked Drewbie that question is because a couple of reasons, but one is in Apex, there are a lot of very successful people, 6, 7, 8-figure earners, and probably access to some 9-figure earners, right?
Sure.
It's a very success driven group. Now, I promise you there will be somebody watching or listening that gets a little bit of sick feeling in their mind when I said what I just said. Because you, my friend, probably struggle with maybe a little bit of not you, but like whoever might be listening on the other end, that maybe you can't even imagine that. And there was a day when that was maybe me as well. And that's why I asked you that, is because for people that have never been exposed to success, like I don't bring up 6, 7, 8-figure earners to like be impressive. It's to impress upon the fact that these are like hardworking people who have either created or been a part of or engaged in or enrolled in systems that are successful and have been willing to trust systems that have already been created and have chosen to jump on the train. And because of that, are now able to have success. What's up, buddy? It's all good.
Every time it'd be like that. Somebody rings the doorbell when you're trying to do a podcast, but that's okay. We're still here. No, and, but you're 100% correct though. Like hearing, oh, well, these people are super successful, or when you get into the room like Apex and you see how many people are successful, it can be a little overwhelming. It can kind of make you feel less than. It's not meant to. But I think that's just an internal demon that we all have to fight sometimes. And it happens to everyone, because I've been around thousands of uber successful people in the last 3 years. And I can tell you, they all had the same conversation, right? If I'm talking to somebody about our $50,000 a year program, whether they're making 7 figures a year or 9 figures a year, they both tell me the same thing. Hey, I don't know if I'm a good fit to be in that room, because I don't know. I just want to make sure I can bring value, right? I don't want to step in there and be the dumbest guy in the room. Like, I do, but I also don't want to be in there making everybody else feel like I can't bring something to the table. And so this is at every level of life. You're going to feel that, whether you're making 5 figures or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. Again, this is why I want people to rewire that perspective in their mind about success.
Yeah.
Because as you grow as a person, you will stretch your identity to meet that next version of yourself.
Absolutely. And like, I very vulnerably, very like openly say, I bring this subject up because I, again, have been that guy in the room. Truth be told, and I shared this with Danny, it was actually kind of an emotional conversation when we visited several months ago. Like, I mean, I'm an overweight guy. I don't like dressing up because maybe you were at this point when you were over 300 pounds. I don't like, I mean, I actually just shared this with my mom. My mom and I are very close, and I shared this with her just the other day. Like, there's a reason I don't like going to church. I don't like going to events where I have to dress up. Like, I'm the most uncomfortable for me is when I have to think of dressing up, because dressing up as a heavy person is it's hard. It's scary. It's uncomfortable. There are many mental struggles for me with that. Right. So like, I went to $1 Million Mastermind last year and started to have those struggles. The coolest part, well, there was a lot of cool parts. One of the cool parts was that it's very come as you are. And I remember getting the text, or it was either a text or an email, like maybe 4 days before the event. I think it was from Tyler, who I didn't know who the hell Tyler was. Right. But this guy, Tyler, and it's like, hey, our events are like very come as you are. Like, our culture is like jeans and a t-shirt, it is what it is. And I came out of network marketing, where like not to bash that industry, but basically it's like, buy the outfit that you can't afford, be the person that you may never, ever be able to walk in those footsteps, and then go play rah-rah for a weekend. Right. And like, that's what I was in for all those years. And so first of all, I have some PTSD from going to live events, because it was a whole different atmosphere. And that was my first event since I left that industry. So I really, like, there was some mental struggles. But anyways, long story short, I went and it was very come as you are. It was very casual. But again, like, full vulnerability, I was probably one of the heaviest guys in the room. You won't take offense to this because you're not this guy, but the room was full of dudes in black t-shirts, jeans, and beards. They all looked very similar. I say that loosely. A lot of dudes are super strong and powerful and worked out, like very, very, it was super alpha. Right. Yeah. And I said that to Danny, and I remember he just said, he's such a kind-hearted dude. And he just looked at me and he said, do you know that those same alpha dudes have the same struggles? Do you know that I've been in the room with those same alpha dudes that have that cry also? Because I was kind of emotional sharing that, because it's not easy to share that. Like, I'm a big dude. Like, I got tattoos. I'm a big guy. I've struggled. I worked in strip clubs for 13 years, dude. I'm a guy. I'm a dude too, right? But I'm also a dude that was raised by a single mom. Like, I'm not the workout guy. Like, I don't have to, like, I struggle with some internal stuff, and that's also part of the reason why. And you were a part of, like, I mean, there was a few months of dragging my feet to join Apex. Part of that was that feeling of, am I worthy? Am I stepping into something am I worthy of that? Right. And so I say that to say, like, I'm not asking anybody to be a part of Apex. This is not a pitch, as I said earlier. What I want to say is that I don't even know why I'm on this tangent, but I think it's just so crazy that I know my point was that whether you're a 5-figure earner or you're making, several $100,000 a month, people really are just people. And although, for me, it was personal, I have been that guy, and many times in my life where I've been super intimidated to be in a room of people because maybe I felt unworthy. The truth is, first of all, people are human, and second of all, take that and look at it as inspiration. It's not about the dollar sign. Sometimes it's about like, what are these people doing that have that have allowed them to have a better life. Maybe you do want a lamp. Like, I'm not flashy. Flashy doesn't inspire me, but knowing that you can impact your community, like, I don't like, personally, I don't really like when people do really radical things to help people and then they like get braggy about it, or like they flash it around. But like, knowing how much Ryan tithes to Elevate Life Church, that's what I want to do. Like, when I pray for abundance, it's so I can radically help other people. Like, that's what fires me up. So sometimes we got to get out of like that ego mindset and the pride mindset and go, man, how can I impact people? If I could go and I could vulnerably surrender and say, man, what are these people doing that are in the front of the room that have established these massive incomes and listened and learned from the systems to grow these phenomenal companies, or been a part of organizations that are now successful, and what is the impact that they can make, instead of looking at it from a perspective, and I'm guilty of it, judgment, right? It's like, well, they gotta have a fancy car, well, they're buff, right? Or they're this and that. Well, like, they are, but instead look at it from a different perspective. Like, how can they be life changers? How can they be world changers? So, and I just wanted to take the time to say that, because transparency, I've been on that side, but also because I think we miss the boat sometimes. I think we miss it if we overlook the fact that some successful people, a lot of they've been in our shoes. They've been probably broke too. It's probably what drove them to be successful, just like your story. But also they get to impact a lot of people. So if you're driven to want to change your life, like I said early on in this, take notes, dude, like, go be inspired by these people and then go make a massive impact, So,
and I think the best part about it is that when I think about, hey, what is it that drives me? What's pushing me every day? It's yes, I have my family, right? Obviously my wife and my son, they're the first two things on my list of 5 things I'm grateful for every day. But the beautiful part about this is you only have to compete against yourself. Right? This is why, hey, crush the day before it crushes you. Can I look at myself in the mirror and said, hey, I gave my best today? I can honestly say that looking back over every decision that I made a good decision, and I did what was going to make me a better version of myself. Because here's what happens. This is the big secret to success and gurus and all these guys online. How did they get successful? How did they make a lot of money? They focused on being a better version of themselves today than they were yesterday. And tomorrow they're going to focus on being a better version of themselves than they were today. And they just do this every single day. Hey, how can I be a little bit better every day? Are you going to have bad days? Yes. Are you going to miss the gym sometimes? Yes. But if you get to a point where you start to feel guilty about the decisions that you're making because you know they aren't serving to make you the best version of yourself, that's when you truly change. And what happens is the money becomes a byproduct of your personal development. When you become a better version of you, everything around you becomes better by proxy. Now, does that lead to severing some relationships? Yes. Does that mean to making certain changes in your life that maybe you didn't expect? Yes. But will it lead you to being the person that you were put on this planet to be? 100% yes. And so that's the difference, is the people that have found success, they've decided, I'm going to be a better version of myself than I was yesterday, and I'll do the same tomorrow, and I'll do that every day. So if you're seeing somebody who has success in their life and you're feeling guilty about it for some reason, right? You want to project that on them. Start asking yourself instead, hey, what am I doing to be the best version of myself? Because the best version of myself wouldn't be upset that that person has success.
Oh, absolutely. You're so right, man. You're so right. And that's a part of growth in itself. So give yourself some grace, because like, we've been there. We've all, I say that so, like, with so much guilt. I struggle with judgment, man. I've struggled my whole life with judgment. I'm so proud to say I'm better today than I was years ago. But like, we've all been there. So part of what you're saying, Drewbie, with like, we're struggling, you work to become 1% better, you call it whatever you want, like better every day. Like, you're going to fall short sometimes. Give yourself that grace and realize that's also part of that journey. Part of that journey is sometimes you're going to struggle with judgment. Sometimes you're going to cast stones. Sometimes you're going to struggle with like the material part of seeing somebody that's got more success than you. Like those are parts of your growth. I love to say identify those things and like reset. To me, that's no different than skipping the gym or making a bad meal choice. Like identify it, mentally work through it, and then do your best to avoid that as you move forward. Right, that part of crushing the day, part of adjusting, adapting, working to be better the next day, and give yourself a little bit of grace. I think grace is so important, not excuses, but grace to go, hey, didn't nail it today, but I'm super clear on what I need to do different to nail it tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's, we have the FYE saying, the F your excuses. You figure out the F how you want from there.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we don't mess up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, well, that means you can't fail. Like, no, we 100% expect people to have failures, but you own that failure. As you said, identify it. Yep, I said I would do this. It didn't happen. I'm not going to give you any excuse. I'm simply going to say it didn't happen and tell you this is when you can set the new expectation for it to be completed.
Yeah.
And as long as you can stick to that, right? Like when I give someone my word, that is my goal, is to always show up and deliver on that 100%. We do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. Doesn't mean we're always perfect. It doesn't mean that the universe, the force of average, doesn't throw things in our lap sometimes. However, we just accept that we will have ownership of everything that happens through our day. And if we make a mistake, if we do something wrong, then we will own it and we will move forward and we will fix it. We're not going to make excuses. We're not going to come up with reasons as to why we're failures. We're simply going to learn the lesson and continue moving forward. And that's where the grace comes in. It's just understanding nobody expects you to be perfect. But if you want to be better, you've got to hold yourself to a standard. And so whatever that standard looks like, that's where you find the grace, right? Maybe it's 80-20. Hey, 80% of the time, I know I'm on track. 20%, I screw up. Okay.
Sure.
Maybe you want to be a little more dialed into that. I don't want to be the 1%, right? I'm going to mess up 1% of the time. Okay, cool. But give yourself a measurement, and then now you have that grace. But there's always that hard boundary of, hey, if I ever get up against this wall, I know I'm making more bad choices than good choices. And so that grace has to turn into accountability.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so true. I was going to say something now. I can't remember what it was, but I think that that's really cool when you talked about like an 80-20. And what I like about that is whatever that split is, it's just identifying it, just making a decision and then working through that. I think so much of this is just being aware. Hey, so as we start to wrap up, I want to talk about a couple more things just in the next couple of minutes. But Drewbie Wilson and he and your wife and your son, are you happy? What's your day to day like? Are you at a great time in your life? You're the VP of Apex. I think what the organization has going on is huge. I feel like what I see from the outside, there's tons of growth. Is this a great time in your life?
Man, it is. And it's interesting because people often ask me, like, well, how do you build your career? How do you build this job? Like for me, it's about building a lifestyle and then mixing the work in around it that allows me to continue to live the lifestyle that I want. Right. So when I talk about my days, I wake up and I run a very routine, structured day. And I do that with a purpose because I know, hey, if I've got assumingly 18 hours of time that I'm awake, I know I've got 18 hours every day to get the most out of that day because I may not wake up tomorrow. God willing, like I will, but like I may not wake up tomorrow. So, hey, what am I going to do in these 18 hours? It's going to allow me to feel that fulfillment, to feel as though I've crushed the day. And so I get my workout time, I get my gratitude, I get my mindset stuff in. I put time on the calendar every day for my family. I put time on there for things I know need to get done that are going to keep the money coming into the bank account because let's be honest, the money is those are the fun coupons, right? That's what Leo calls them in Wolf of Wall Street, the fun coupons. Well, I need that as a tool, as a resource to be able to continue doing the things that I want to do with my family, having a roof over my head, making sure we have safe vehicles to get us where we need to go, right? Food on our plate, all these things that are needs some of those needs have, certain expectations now, right? As we've gotten more successful. But the point is I'm building my day around, what do I want out of life? I want to be able to, have my health and my wellness. I want to feel fulfilled faithfully in my spirituality and my mindset, right? I know I need to make the money that I'm going to need to live the life that I want to live. I want to travel. I want to do things. So am I happy? Yes, I'm always waking up and working towards happiness, in a sense of, is what I'm doing giving me fulfillment? Is where I'm at mentally making me feel as though I'm becoming the better version of myself? So I hope the listener understands from the standpoint of like, that I'll be happy when mentality never gets you anywhere, because you're always fighting a battle and thinking about a future version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. And so this kind of ties in, and I know we're coming up on time, but again, for me, when I was grinding, I was thinking about this future of what we were going to live, but I wasn't in the now. And so this is where it comes back to, every day I build my day so that I can live in the now and I can embrace where I'm at, and know that if I don't get tomorrow, at least the things that I've done today and the past days were the best version of me.
Powerful.
Hopefully that answers your question.
It does, man. And it's so well said. I don't want to overlook the weight loss. And I don't want to make it super short, but I do want to respect time. So talk about your weight loss journey real quick. I mean, you kind of have, I think in a roundabout way you have, because basically you've bettered your life, and in turn you have made choices that have allowed your weight loss journey to happen. But what did that look like? There must have been a mental shift, a decision was made, and you've had success and results because of that. What was that light bulb moment? And then what was the process?
So I've struggled with weight my whole life. I was always the husky kid in school. Like in middle school, I was buying adult men's pants. Like I've always just been a bigger dude, let's say. When my wife and I had gotten together, I had been on a pretty bad streak of just unhealthy eating. So I had lost a lot of weight, but it was mostly because I just didn't eat very well, and I was just constantly on the go and living on energy drinks and shit, right? And so I was an unhealthy skinny. When we got together, what happens when you're happy and comfortable? You go out to eat, you have some more cocktails, late night chocolate binges, whatever. And I started putting weight back on. So I had gone from, 210 pounds when her and I got together to, I think when my son was born, I was probably up around 285. At one point in my life, I had been over 300 pounds before I kind of like lost it through like the unhealthy route. She got pregnant. I put on that pregnancy weight. My son was born. Obviously, I wasn't in the best shape of my life. And we had a moment where I kind of went, I don't want to be that dad who can't play with their son because he's out of breath, because he's just a fucking lazy piece of shit and doesn't work out or do anything to better his life, right? And also my wife and I had a moment where she was kind of like, hey, babe, I love you, but, I'm not loving how you're looking right now. That's a hard thing, and I really, truly appreciate her for having that conversation and having the strength in her to be honest about her feelings, because it did mentally make me go, well, shit, like, what if I'm doing all this work and I'm just going to keel over and die, and some other asshole gets to take my life insurance money and sleep in my bed with my beautiful wife and raise my son because I was an asshole and didn't take care of myself.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of in correlation with that big dive into personal development. And that's why I started walking. And I was walking, 3.5 miles every morning. And I went from walking to, I've always ridden BMX and skateboarded and done like kind of the extreme sports. So I bought a road bike and I started riding my road bike. And what the biggest difference for me was having a purpose for for working out, right? Like, I don't love to work out. Do I get a kick out of it now? I've learned how to like rewire my mind for that dopamine rush of like needing that workout, that adrenaline. But I wasn't always that way. I just knew, hey, if I don't get up and do this, then my future looks like dead, some other asshole sleeping with my wife. And then I'm the ghost that's got to watch this shit going on because I was, too much of an asshole to get my life together. So when I would get up, I would wake up and I'd think about, all right, I'm going to go crush the day. by getting this workout done, by listening to somebody, motivating me and inspiring me about what's possible. Because now that I've flipped that switch of anything you want can be a reality if you're willing to work for it. Well, the reality is, like, I want to be in shape. I want to run with my son. I want to be able to, have my wife look at me and get that drooly look in her face. And so these are the things that I do because it's what makes me feel good. And so weight loss wise, I can tell people, and I want people to really hear me when I say this, I've been 315 pounds and was miserable. I've worked out, eaten like super strict diet, dialed in everything, and gotten to 183 pounds, smallest I'd been since high school, middle school, and I hated it. I didn't like how I looked. I was like, I look like a string bean, like I look like I'm on drugs. But I was 100% clean. I was totally sober, no, nothing, just clean eating and living how you should, right? And I wasn't happy. So when it comes to your physical fitness, I want people to truly think about, obviously, if you're unhealthy in a sense of, you need to do certain things because it's not behooving to you to where you are, that's good. Start working on that. But don't underestimate the power of a good walk. Everybody's like, I got to go to the gym 3 times a week. And I got to get up and go walk for an hour every day. You're doing it anyways. You're just doing it in spurts. But if you're intentional about a walk every day, it does 2 really big things. One, it gets you moving, get your heart rate up. It's one of the best low intensity exercises you can truly do. But 2, that time that you spend talking to yourself in your mind while you're walking, it's a very valuable time. That kind of introspection with yourself, those hard conversations that you have while you're out there sweating, freezing, dealing with the rain, dealing with the wind, whatever you're going through, right? That introspective time that you have, it will allow you to have those hard conversations, which will give you permission to make the changes you need to make in your life to be the person you want to be. So, weight loss wise, the big picture is, hey, are you healthy? Do you feel good? And if not, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel good? Okay, what's that going to take? Well, maybe it just starts with the walk. Maybe it just starts with some basic things of feeling like, hey, I can touch my toes again. I couldn't touch my toes at one point in my life. That hurt thinking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't touch my toes, right? But it all comes back to, how do you want to feel? That's not so much about the looks, right? The looks is a whole different thing, like that we can get into body dysmorphia. That's a whole thing. How do you want to feel? Go for that. I want to feel good. I want to feel like I have energy. I want to feel like I can get up and go run with my kid. I want to feel like I could go ride my bike 5 miles to the ice cream shop for an ice cream cone and then ride 5 miles back, because I won't feel guilty about that, right? It's a kind of cancels each other out, but not everybody can get on their bike and ride 5 miles. So how do you want to feel? And then build a routine that allows you to consistently do the thing that you feel good doing, right? For some people, it might be riding a bike. For some people, it might be walking. For some people, it might be lifting weights in the gym. I was never that person. I like to walk and I like to ride my bike. So those are the things I did because I was able to do it consistently. And over time, building that consistency, building in that routine to my schedule of, hey, this is just going to be the first thing I do every single day. It's what allowed me to be in where I'm pretty much in the best shape of my life. I love tacos and margaritas. That's a whole different conversation. But I'm literally in the best shape of my life because I made that commitment to just say, hey, every morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to do a workout. Some mornings it's a really, really tough workout. Some mornings it's just a walk around the neighborhood. But it's something every single day to work towards that better version of myself.
And you, first of all, is it 7 days a week?
98% of the time it's 7 days a week. And usually if it's a day that I'm not working out, it's because we're going somewhere and walking around and doing something. It's just not like me on my watch tracking it as super, super intentional.
Gotcha. And so what is your current results? Your highest, you were at 300 and did you say 18 pounds?
Yeah. And my biggest, I was 315. I got down when I finished the 75 hard program. I was 185 pounds, super lean, super ripped, but just didn't love how I looked. So right now I'm probably around 210, 215 pounds. If I go have tacos and margaritas tonight, it's probably on the high end, 215 or so. But I'm the strongest I've ever been. I've been setting PRs almost every month in the gym with my, like I do the Olympic deadlift, squat, press, all that kind of stuff. But I'm right around 210 pounds, and I feel pretty good about myself. My arms are getting a little bigger. I feel strong and energetic, right? Like I said, the looks are kind of off the whatever, but like for me, when I put on a nice shirt, I do my hair up, my wife looks at me, she gets that little gleam in her eyes. I feel good, so I know I'm on the right track.
Yeah. And I think feeling good is like key. I mean, the looks thing, like you said, that could be a whole nother subject, but I ultimately feeling good is so key, dude. So congratulations. That's huge.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge. It's so awesome. Drewbie has a book out. Is it called Crushing the? I have it. It's in my desk.
Crushing the Day.
Crushing the Day. And I have not read it yet. I can't stand when people are so full of shit and they aren't honest. So like I haven't read the book yet, but it's sitting on my desk. So I will.
It'll take you an hour. Sit down and read it. It's a real short read. I tried to make it so that it was like easy and impactful, because like you said, at the end of the day, man, if just one person hears this, one person reads the book, and it really makes an impact where they can change their life for the better, then the legacy that I'm leaving will continue to have its ripple.
Absolutely. Amen to that. So not only will I read it, but it will be in the description. I'll actually, when I put it in the description, it'll be where you can just order it for those of you guys, whether you want there is an Audible version, correct? Or no, it's just the Amazon
coming soon. So Audible's in mastering now, but right now you can get the Kindle or the soft copy.
Soft copy. Okay.
Yep.
So those will be, I'll put that in the description for sure, as well as how you can find not only Drewbie's Instagram page, but also the Crushing the Day page on Instagram as well. And so what are you reading right now?
So I have 3 daily reads. I read 3 pages every day: the Daily Laws, the Daily Stoic, and then the Daily Leadership Bible by John Maxwell. So I read those dailies, and then I am currently finishing up Uncommon Leadership by Ben Newman at my house, and at the office, because I have 2 different books that I'm reading. I am reading The 5 Love Languages of the Workplace.
Of the Workplace. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. Not familiar with that. All right.
I will.
Okay, cool. I will drop those as well, guys, so that you can find links to make it easy for you if you guys are interested in those books. If you're going to leave our friends with one last final thing in the next 33 and a half seconds, what's your final statement? Your last little thing for somebody, what would that be?
Crush the day before it crushes you. Call the damn leads and trust the process.
I love it. I appreciate you so much, dude. It's been a pleasure. It's just great to connect with you, get to know you a little bit better. You guys make sure you check Drewbie out on social media. Hey, if you like anything that you've seen, heard today, will you do me a favor and just make sure that you share it out to other people? Remember, the impact that it might make on you is going to also possibly make an impact on somebody else. Or I'll go one step further. Maybe it didn't make an impact on you, but you just had fun hanging out with us because we're sexy. you might have a friend, a family member, a cousin, an uncle. It might be somebody that you don't like. But if you do share this out, you just don't know who's on the other end of the line, quote unquote. And so do that. I'll also ask you to like, share, comment, all the stuff. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, all that like nerdy stuff that I have to say at the end. But if you screenshot wherever you're at, make sure you tag both of us as well, because we'd like to see that you're watching or listening, whatever you're doing. We certainly appreciate it. Guys, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks so much. See ya.